Today's session is all about reducing anxiety with your students. So the title is Creating Agency to Reduce Anxieties. What I'd like to do is share 3 strategies with you that may fit for your class or may fit for a future class. It's going to be a very quick session. These are intended to be only about 10 minutes long, time for some questions, and then you get to run off back to your daily work. Okay, so I'm going to jump right in. No wasting any time. So the first one I'm looking at here is acknowledging uncertainty. I think we all know that that's been very helpful for us through this whole process that we've been going through in the last few years. And this example here, I know that the screen looks a little bit busy, but really what we're doing is we're looking to gather from students what their concerns are. This can happen at any time of the term. Preferably, it could happen early in the term if that's something that you can make time in your schedule. This activity would require dedicating some time in the class time. The other ones after can be embedded a little bit easier and a little quicker. What this involves is really capturing from your students, having them come together and share with you what is unknown this term, right? There's all these different scenarios that we could encounter, whether it's in life or in the class, and having that option open for students to share what's uncertain in their life and what's uncertain in the class. This way, you're allowing the students to see that they're not alone in these concerns. We know that students are facing a lot of feelings of isolation in the past year and a half, and this is one way we can reduce that, where if we have a commonality of what's uncertain in our life and in our learning, and then identifying from there the theme around what can we control, right? Helping students know, and ourselves as instructors also know, what can we actually control with these uncertainties. And that's why this is titled Acknowledging Uncertainty, not necessarily solving it, because even just acknowledging that can be a very, very powerful tool. From there, what we want to do is facilitate with our students what are the priorities here. If we have this big list, whether we've captured it in Google Docs or in a group with our chat, what are the things that can impact our learning the most, and what's the most concerning? And quite possibly the things that are most concerning might outweigh the things that will impact our learning. This is meant to be driven by our students and their concerns brought forward. And it may require allowing some time in your class that really is focused more on the student life than the learning experience that you have in your classroom. And looking at the top 2. So really thinking about what are the top 2 that are emerging, and preferably we can allow the students to tell us what that is, whether we use polling or we ask them to put stars beside the Google Doc notes or something like that, where we really identify what are the top 2 scenarios that are really concerning to us as a collective student body, whether they're high possibility or not. That's okay. We're just talking about what's concerning and what is creating concern and anxiety in our students. Then the next step comes into really pulling our students into discussion. So this is where they go from really contributing content or typing or collectively submitting some information to going into group work and talking about, here's our first 2 scenarios. So if we have scenario 1 and scenario 2, what could happen if they intersect? So depending on the size of your class, you could have 4 breakout rooms. You could have 20 breakout rooms, but asking each breakout room to look at scenario 1 and scenario 2 and how they could intersect and what that might look like. What could it look like for me as a student? How could it impact me? What could we possibly do? What really is in our control? Because I think that question will have to be asked multiple times. And then what's not in our control? And that, especially acknowledging what's not in our control, will be really key for the students to be able to just identify and acknowledge that. So that process and going through that, and I'm kind of defining it as if you have a synchronous class with breakout room opportunities, but this could be done offline with Google Docs. It could be done offline with a discussion board. There's some different ways that this could be facilitated depending on your class environment and how you're delivering your class this term. It could be done at any point during the term. And once you have that information with you as an instructor, then it's your opportunity to remind them that you know this. right? This is where you create that reinforced comfort, reinforced knowledge that you know what's concerning them when they come into your class. Whether there's answers or not, just acknowledging that uncertainty and validating that maybe it's uncertain for you too. Maybe there really isn't answers right now, or maybe there is. And if there is answers or possible solutions that we can enact if that possibility comes true, then we can look at it when the time comes. And we already have had a bit of discussion around it. So the example that I'm really looking at here that I think we can all relate to is online versus face-to-face. That's my scenario one, the vertical. So we're looking at a scale. What if we're online? What if we're face-to-face? And then my second scenario here is synchronous and asynchronous. That scale of, are we all together, or are we learning disjointedly at some points and then coming together? Or do we not come together at all and really talk off schedule online in different formats? And what does it look like for our students when we move into that online and asynchronous zone, right? What the answers that you might find come through with the students working on this is having some statements come out. I worry that I might feel isolated if we start to learn online and asynchronously. I worry that I might fall behind schedule. You might also find some solutions coming through there that may or may not be reasonable for your class, but at least they're coming through. So maybe office hours for the instructor could help. Maybe office hours with the students can help. So having the students come up with those solutions with you is also helps you move out of that space of uncertainty and think, I don't have to have all the answers. Because really this is just about acknowledging it. So that's the first idea that I had that I wanted to share with all of you. It is the one that requires some dedicated time with your students, some dedicated facilitation and a process in place. Google Docs or eClass discussion boards could be some simple solutions around that. The second one here, which I hear many instructors would look at this and think, oh no, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this, annotating your syllabus. And what I hear too is that sometimes we can't get our students to look at our syllabus in the first place. So this could be an entry point to get your students to look at it. But if you already have your students looking at your syllabus and you have them acknowledging certain milestones and expectations that you have, this could be the next step for you to get that feedback loop in place, right? If you really ask them to look at it critically and give you their thoughts in a formatted, structured way, then that's going to set up for you an opportunity to create the environment that they're ready for with that formative feedback happening. It's also going to help your students have a little bit less anxiety because you're guiding them through what's expected of them in the class. That's the syllabus. But you're also giving them an opportunity to give their thoughts and feedback and guiding them in their reflection on that. So the stages that I've mapped out here for you, select a section of your syllabus. So of course, we don't really want to just give them a free-for-all because they may get stuck on considering and thinking and annotating topics that we can't change. So we want to have them really focus on a section of the syllabus that perhaps can be changed or perhaps can be discussed in more depth to create a little bit more knowledge for our students while they come into our class. Give them some guiding questions. So what's going to help them prepare for the term, or what's going to help them prepare for the next part of the term, right? We're already into our term. So this isn't an opening activity, but it is an integration activity. So where can I create more clarity? When are you the busiest in your schedule? And how does that line up with the milestones that I have in my class? Where do our key assignments align with your schedule? What is missing, right? That's a really nice open-ended question. And that could be really termed, that question is open in terms of, what's missing and what you need to be successful. What's missing in terms of what you want to learn. What's missing in terms of how we're going to engage as a class. So those questions could be refined further, or you could keep them really open and then see what you get. Could be kind of fun activity that way. And then the final part really is being accountable. So having that feedback come in really does require that we as instructors have a response available. So again, I'll go back to acknowledging. Collecting that feedback doesn't mean that we have to action everything. It means that we acknowledge what we've received. We create some themes around what's emerged and what the questions or concerns are, and then repeat that cycle a little bit. Whether you have it before your midterm, before your final exam, before or after certain assignments, this can be a way to really anchor your students in what the sequence of your class is and the expectations, and create that feedback loop with them. Some tools that you can use to do this, you can do it directly in eClass with the annotation tool there. You could put your syllabus in Google Docs and have students annotating in there. Or you could consider using an external tool such as Hypothesis. And that tool is one that you could have student doing anonymous annotations, which I think could be really valuable, especially if some of the questions may be a little sticky or concerning for students to expose their thoughts on. The third one here is crowdsourcing your class. This is kind of a fun topic to explore, and it harkens back to the first one that I mentioned, where we're collecting information from the students, theming and sorting it again. And this could be at different stages of your class where there's an opportunity for students to guide the direction. Maybe there's 3 topics that are coming up in your next lesson plan that don't necessarily need to be sequenced. Which ones do the students want to tackle first? Why do they want to tackle it first? Which ways would they like to explore that topic? Maybe there are some different formats of instruction that you can offer them to choose between. Going even further than that, looking at an ed camp. This is a term that you can find through K-12 systems as well as post-secondary, where you allow students to come up with the topics and the knowledge that they want to explore together, prioritize it just like we did with the uncertainties, and then they drive that activity. They go into the breakout rooms and explore those topics together with some resources at hand. They go in and co-teach or peer learn together and take those next steps. So it's really about allowing them to decide which direction this next class is going. And again, this doesn't have to change your whole term. It doesn't have to change your whole class. It could be for one activity or one section of your learning outcomes that you focus. So these are some 3 examples where we're really looking at giving students some little bits of choice or feedback or opportunities to voice their uncertainties, questions, concerns throughout the process of our learning. That doesn't necessitate us in changing what we're doing in a huge way, and also reduces the isolation that our students feel when they're in this pandemic environment.